So you look nice. You got a collared shirt on. Is this a special occasion for your recording? Or
I
is
got
it just
this
because
I got this for Valentine's Day.
We haven't been here for, a little while. We've Josh and I have been out dicking around in Hawaii, and then he's getting ready to head out to Mexico tomorrow, man. That's nice.
Got to go pick up some yayo.
Did you guys get anything good for Valentine's Day? I got this shirt. It's cornflower blue.
I got something, but I probably can't say it on this podcast. Trying to keep it PG.
I want to say something so bad.
We're trying to, hey man, we're trying to get syndicated. We're not going to get syndicated if
not with the comment I was about to make.
Yeah, I didn't know. Yeah, I didn't know cornflower blue was a thing. Yeah,
I don't know. It's from Fight Club. His boss was always asking if he could get the font in cornflower blue. He's wearing his cornflower blue tie again. It must be Tuesday.
Oh, so, yeah. Okay.
Anytime something is nondescript blue, I call it cornflower blue. But yeah, I mean, I think we're at the phase. If Valentine's Day is on a Wednesday, the wife and I are just going to be like, hey, I'm going to pick something for you from the store, and that's going to be basically that, and a couple of cards. But I just, I got her a little plant that she likes with a little stuffed monkey, and she got me a shirt and some candy that I'll never eat. So yeah. And then this weekend we'll go out to eat in a couple places, and we'll call that Valentine's Day. But fortunately I don't have a wife who makes a big deal out of it.
Yeah. We just exchange cards. And the wife got me, like this little, it looks like it's heart shaped. And you would think, okay, well, there's chocolates in there. It was just like beef jerky, because she knows that I'm not eating the candy.
That's awesome.
I'm trying to be
funny.
good. Yeah.
That's
and
funny.
So, but we had a big Christmas. And then we got, we're flying out tomorrow, as Roger said, to go spend a week, laying by the pool and the beach in Cancun, and, and stuff. So it's Valentine's Day is one of those things. Like, we acknowledge it, but it's nothing. We're not spending a lot of money or doing anything big for it.
Speaking of Christmas, so the wife looks at the bank account the other day, and she goes, "What's wrong with the bank account?" And I'm like, "We had a big Christmas. Like, it takes a month or two to recover from a Christmas like that." And she's like,
if you don't have anything else that comes up, right?
Yeah.
Right.
And so fortunately, though, we're not, big ballers or anything. Josh and Roger think I am, but I'm not. Fortunately, we're at a place, though, where we don't look at our bank account every day, and it's just like, it's taken me 50 years to get to that point where, because you remember back in the day, Roger, when you and Summer were brand new married and stuff, and us too, looking at that bank account every month, every week, every day, it's like, okay, when's this check going to come out? When's this bill going to come out? I got to be real careful with this one, because this is it, man. But yeah, it's just good to be in a place where you don't have to eye that every day and worry about bills coming out.
Well, it's tough, right? When it was just myself, life was easy. I never kept a check ledger, because I'm like, okay, I got paid, $300, this week, or for my 2-week paycheck. So I know in my head I can't spend over $300. So, if I put gas in my truck, okay, that was $25. That means I got $275 left. So I didn't have it. I never had it down to the penny. But I always knew within 5, 10, 15, $20 that, okay, this is what I got in there. And then, of course, you get down close to float check day, and you're like, let me check the look to see exactly how much I got in there. Can I go out to the club, this weekend or whatever? But then you get married, and then like myself, coming into a blended family, it's a game changer, because typical 1950s Americana. You meet your high school sweetheart, you guys get married, you live together for a little bit, then you pop out a kid, then another kid. And so your financial obligations, slowly grow. And they kind of coincidentally with your age and hopefully maturity and your responsibility level. So you kind of grow into that. I went from being like a stupid private, with $300 of beer money every 2 weeks. So, oh, by the way, you've got some kids now and a wife. So, wow. So it was easy for me to account for myself. And it was easy for me to account for my wife. Fortunately, she worked. But then it's like, dude, and our listeners know out there, kids are freaking expensive. And that's what eats up all your money, because it's oh, mom, dad, I need $20 for this field trip. Well, when do you need it by? Well, I need it today. Okay, well, here's 20. And it'll always be like on the 12th. Like, well, I don't get paid for 3 more days. I was going to have this 20 last me for, 3 days. Like, all right, here's your 20. And then, then the other kid comes up. Yeah, I got to buy this book. When do you need to buy it? I need to buy it today. I'm like, okay, now we're really going into float check day, and we might legitimately be writing a check. So, but much like you, we're to a point now, fortunately, one, my kids are grown, but you go through some speed bumps or over some speed bumps, and you kind of get to that point where, you know what, even now, I mean, I think it's just simpler. I have a credit card. My wife has a credit card that we pay off every month. We use it for the points or whatever. And she's like, hey, here's your allowance. So spend it whatever you want to buy it. You do you. And then as long as I stay within that limit, she pays it off and we're good.
So there is a listener that we have, I don't know if I should mention his name or not, who works for a regional bank, I guess you'd call it. It's one of the largest, I think it's the largest privately owned bank in the United States. And this guy, he knows who he is now. But that guy, I bet that when I was the first year in the Army, I was coming out of college. So I had credit card debt, that I ran up in college. And so I was paying that off, which I did, but it wasn't much, $5,000 or so. That was a lot of money back in 1997. But I was, paycheck to paycheck, beer money was scared. I couldn't go out and stuff. I actually had bills. So overdraft protection from this bank, it was like $6 per, like you had like $200, which was a lot for me. I had $200 protection where I wasn't going to go to jail as long as I didn't spend more than, $200 below zero in my checking account. But it was a $6 charge, I think, every single time. And I guarantee Darren probably he probably bought a Trigicon scope on my overdraft for the first couple of years I was in the Army. But man, I mean, those overdraft fees now are like $25, $35, I think. I don't know. You guys even know how much they charge?
Well, I think it's one of the things that they're complaining about. A lot of the Democrats are like, these high overdraft fees and this and that. It's like, well, hey, the fix for that is don't overdraw your account. I mean, that, it's crazy because everything from, everybody's heard about the shooters in Kansas City at the parade, and to overdraft, to student loans, to, Biden and his creepy Super Bowl, pre-recorded interview about shrinkflation. There is, and we've talked about this before, there is no more personal responsibility at all. It is not even everybody else's fault. It's everything's fault. It's like, oh, well, there's no person to blame here. Junk fees. There you go. It's like, oh, well, you know what? A family of 3 should be able to sit together on an airplane. Well, you know what? They can if you buy all 3 tickets together and you want to pay that money. That's kind of how markets work. That's how businesses and capitalism work, and it's funny because he basically, and I think, Luke, you texted this, Joe Biden goes and does his pre-recorded interview about shrinkflation, basically complaining about Bidenomics. It's like, hey, this is the reason why it is the way it is, because your policies suck. And you're well, you know what? He's not too stupid to realize it. He knows, his cabinet knows. He's just hoping, and as Josh would say, probably right, that most of Americans are too stupid to notice, but it's like they have just completely removed, individual, personal, parental responsibility from everything. And that's schools, that's eating, that's healthcare, that's, whatever it is, dude, it's always something. And again, it's not even an individual's fault. It's something else's fault, right? Something's fault. It's the banks. And it's like, you talk about all these overdraft fees and this, and it's like, hey, let's talk about the monetary side of this. Like, how do you think your 401k is funded? How do you think a lot of your pensions are funded? A lot of these things are invested in the market. And oh, by the way, you need them to make money, not legally, but it's like, hey, man, that's how they make money. It's as old as time, but you just gotta, again, they just remove the responsibility. It just doesn't exist anymore.
But no, and that's been happening for a very long time. And a lot of the reason because the federal government has overreached and stepped down into issues that are best handled by communities and states. You go back and you take a look at, if there's somebody in my neighborhood, and we have a small neighborhood. There's somebody in my neighborhood who is in need. Their first resource, one, should be their family. All right. Like, their family, they're very, very close friends. That should be their first safety net. Then after that, okay, if you go to a church, a mosque, a synagogue, whatever, that should be your second safety net, right? And you open up the aperture a little bit. And then it should be, possibly, maybe your township, your city helps. But when the federal government dives down and says, hey, you in that neighborhood, at 123 Main Street, we're going to take care of you. We're going to give you a phone. We're going to make sure you have some cheese and some milk, and some commodities. Then you remove all those safety nets, and it is akin to those signs in Yellowstone that say, "Don't feed the animals." Why? Why do you not feed the animals? Because then the animals become dependent upon that. They become dependent upon you. They lose their fear, and they just keep coming back for that, quote unquote, free lunch, which we all know is not free because people like us wind up paying for it. But, like I said, the majority of Americans aren't smart enough to realize that. And it's easier because, Luke said this time and again, he's 100% correct. People are comfortable. And as long as people are comfortable, they're willing to sit there and debate with you on a 30% flat tax when we started a revolution over a 3% tax, And so we're going to continue to go down this road where the federal government expands and expands, because when people get in trouble, their first instinct is not to, okay, what did I do to get in this position and how can I get myself out of it? They turn around, look at the federal government and say, when are you going to help me? Right. We've all got stories growing up, my hot dog bun and hamburger bun, sandwich, French toast, everything that came out of the same bag of bread. There was no like, man, we're really up against it. When's the federal government going to step in and, give us some help so I can buy actual, hot dog buns that are made for just hot dogs? It was, well, this is it. This is what we got. And we're going to make do. There was never talk about, well, let's see if WIC can help out. Let's see if we can get, this, that, or the other. There was no talk of that. It was, this is what we got, and this is what we're going to do, and this is what we're going to deal with. So different times.
You got me thinking about a nice piece of bread, wheat bread. We weren't allowed to have white bread because that's bad for you. But
white bread is the devil.
That's right. You get a piece of, you get that. Because we didn't have a microwave either, man. How the hell we heat up them hot dogs? I guess we boiled them most of the time.
Yeah.
But you get that piece of bread, you get a piece of American cheese, not the kind that have the individual wrapper, but the kind that, you know what I'm saying? Because the individual wrapper back in the 80s, early 80s, the individual wrapper, those for rich people, man. We don't get that individual wrappers. You get a piece of cheese on that. You get that hot dog heated up, put that on there. You have that nice hot dog with some ketchup or whatever. Man, that makes me hungry.
But you had to do it diagonal, right? You had to do it diagonal.
Yeah.
That's no way it fit on there.
Of course. But what are you saying?
I was going to say, like, I grew up to the point to where my senior year of high school, dude, I saved money up I saved my paycheck probably for 2 months so I could take my girlfriend at the time to Olive Garden, because I was like, oh, we're going fancy. Like, and to me, Olive Garden was like, that would, bro, you didn't get any fancier than that. It was like, they have all you can eat breadsticks? Really? For one price? Oh my Lord. I never saw the inside of an Olive Garden until that night. And I was at awe. I was like, dude, this is where these people have made it. They have arrived.
And that was before all you can eat breadsticks was like a thing, right? Now it's a thing. You go to Olive Garden, you just get the salad and breadsticks. But it was like, well, we finished our breadsticks. Man, those things were good. Never had anything like that before. And then the waiter comes and puts another, and you like looking at him like, what are you doing? It kind of scares you when he puts it.
I can't afford another one.
Oh, no, this is complimentary. I'm like, whoa. I was the same way, dude. Olive Garden, when Amarillo got an Olive Garden back in the day, it's like, oof, fancy pantsy. That was crazy, dude. But I wanted to say something. One of the times I saw the sign that don't feed the animals was in Costa Rica. And we had gone down to the coast and they had these iguanas, right? And there are these signs in English and Spanish, don't feed the iguanas, because what Josh just said. And it was like a long thing that they had written on this public, they lose the ability to hunt for themselves and they no longer this and that. Now, I remember taking a picture of it and I was like, huh. But isn't it crazy how that path of least resistance, that handout, that's a reptilian brain thing. That goes. Reptiles do the same. They'll take the path of least resistance where they no longer can fend for themselves. They're going to do what's easiest. That is in our reptilian brain. That's not a human thing. That's an animal thing. You know, it's just I've always found that absolutely fascinating that people think that humans think, oh, we're different than animals. You know, if we'll, you know, if the government or whatever social program is going to give you, you know, for 5 years, you don't have to work. You don't got to do nothing. You just get that check and you go out and buy that stuff, that the ability to work won't go away because we're human beings. No, it goes away, dude. It goes away. And to try to get a human being, this is where a human being is better than a reptile, I guess. A human being will have to be poked and prodded to get to that point where they can provide them for themselves. A reptile just die. But at least a human being can come back, but it's that hard. It'll kill a reptile or a monkey or whatever. A human being can get to that point, but it underscores how difficult it is to bring somebody off that government tee, you know? And speaking of reptilian brains, dude, Fannie Willis needs a new fashion consultant because, dude, she walked up on the stand looking like a busted can of biscuits. Dude, it's like, did no one tell you to like wear like a decent bra or something? Like she looked awful. She just looked awful. I don't know if you want to talk about Fannie Willis or not.
Dude, that whole thing, you know, I sat there and I watched Nathan Wade get on stand. I watched Fannie Willis get on stand, Fannie Willis get on stand. And so, and I'm not exactly sure because she's not on trial. Okay. So I guess it's like an evidentiary hearing or something like that. So, you know, I'm not sure of all the wickets of all that, but there was no doubt in my mind that her and Wade are both sleazeballs. They are sleazy as all get out, right? And it's even worse watching lawyers on the stand because they play with the words. It's like, come on, man, what's the definition? Well, it depends on the definition of what is, right? That's the kind of game he played. And it's but you know, to that point, and I don't know if they're plaintiffs or what the prosecutor would be the prosecutors that's questioning them. It's like their questions are horrible. They suck. Now, and we text this earlier today. So, you know, by the time this thing comes out, I'll try to drop it tomorrow, Saturday, or whatever. So who knows what happens the next day or two. But I am hoping that the plaintiffs or the prosecution, whatever you want to call them, have this bag of evidence that they're getting ready to drop. Now, there's no trial, so I don't think discovery exists and that type of stuff because there were a lot of exhibits that were presented that, I mean, did you see the part? Did you watch any of it today, Luke? Like when they were presenting evidence?
Off and on. Yeah. On both of them. Yeah.
Did you see the exhibits 1 through 10 that were all labeled exhibit 1? So right then and there, I was just like, she's like, this one's exhibit 1. This is also exhibit 1. And then, so Josh, they're going through and renumbering the exhibits like live fire. I'm like, okay, this is completely bush league. But, you know, point being is they were asking a lot of pointed questions that, one, you're either stupid or you've got a bag of evidence. Now, if they've got the bag of evidence, then Fannie is in trouble. But I'm not that confident. And I'll give an example. It's like, I think the guy got on there towards the end and was like, so Fannie, how many times have you and Mr. Wade gone to DC together? She's like, I've never been to DC with that guy. And it's like, not once. She's like, I've never been to DC, Maryland, Virginia, the MVD, as they call it, the DMV, the military district. I mean, dude, it was a very, very, no, we have never been there together. Period.
Together. That was
right.
what I was wondering was when he was asking that, because I thought that was actually one of the most interesting parts, because the implication is that, what's his name? There's Fannie Willis and what's his name?
Nathan Wade.
Yeah. Nathan Wade. The implication is that they went there together to meet with special counsel from the Biden administration. It's like, whoa, you know, but here's the thing. If somebody, I remember I did hear that one asked, and I don't know if you have more to say, Roger, and Josh hasn't said much in a while, but if someone asked me that question, have you ever been there at the same time? Because that's what he asked. Have you been there together? No. Have you been there at the same time? No. How could you know that? How would you know that you weren't there at the same time? Maybe, I don't know. If we were there at the same time, it was sheer happenstance. But see, this woman is not smart enough to even cover her ass like that. Because she never said that. I was like, well, if I was on the stand, I'd be like, no, we never purposely went together. I guess we could have been there at the same time, but I didn't know that he was there, and he didn't know that I was there. You know,
but
I don't
her
know.
answers to a couple of those and Nathan's were so defiant and clear cut. Know that, hey, dude, if you don't have something there saying, oh yeah, you actually were, right? And of course, you know how they break down things. You know, they had to break it down with, were you romantically involved? Because that's the whole deal, right? That she was romantically involved with Nathan Wade before she selected him to be the special prosecutor to prosecute Trump. And, you know, she's saying no, her coworker, quote unquote, former best friend, saying yes. But then it goes down into defining romantic. She's like, well, you mean, you know, she's trying to be hip. Just say, you mean having sex. That's what we're talking about here. And the guy is like, well, no, romantic relationship could be holding hands. It could be going out on a date. And it's very clear in her mind. She's pulling the Bill Clinton. We weren't romantically involved because in her mind, they probably didn't have sex till after, you know, November 21st. Right. She was like, yeah, they probably went on a couple of dates. They held hands. They kissed a little bit, yada, yada, yada. But maybe they didn't have sexual intercourse until, it could have been Lauren Boebert at a dark theater. Absolutely. You know, but so in her mind, it's like, well, no, we weren't romantically involved. And just the lack of follow-up from the people that were questioning. And then with the Nathan Wade thing, I mean, so your firm received $300,000 in payment. Well, no, sort of. Well, it's either a yes or a no. I was with two other people. We received that money, and he had explanations for it. It's like us three. If somebody were to send us a large chunk of money, that we'd say, hey, we split it up evenly. Well, we received the money, we deduct all expenses, and then we split it up evenly amongst us three. So I didn't get $300,000. Well, no, actually, you did get $300,000. You know, the question should be, did your firm receive a check in the amount of $300,000 from the Fulton County DA's office? It's a yes or no. Yes. That's it. Move on.
I know there's courtroom procedures and all this. I get it. I understand that. You're in front of a judge. There's procedure you got to follow. But what was going through my mind, and I don't know if you watched it, Josh, but I know Roger was watching it. What was going through my mind is that I was like, if I was interviewing this person and they were under oath, like the interviews we used to do, I would eat them alive. And I'm not even that smart, but I guarantee I'm smarter than her. He
destroyed him.
Slick. He's pretty slick. He was pretty slick, but I think I could nail him down if it was a custodial interview. You know what I'm saying? You cannot leave. I have you here. But
dude, you know who needs to be like watching this right now? Literally the IRS.
Oh yeah.
Right.
Oh
yeah.
Yeah.
Because I'm sorry to cut you off, but you know, the whole gist of Nathan Wade's thing is, so yeah, man, you know, I do a lot of stuff on, and you know, for my business and everything I do for my business, and some personal stuff I put on my business credit card. It's like, okay, well, so you paid for everything. Well, no. You know, I charge it to my card, but I get reimbursed. Okay. Well, do you have receipts from that? No, it's all cash. So, and they went round and round with these receipts for like 20 minutes. And they're like, so wait a minute. So how do you have, so I have your tax filings here. So what do you turn into your accountant? He's like, oh man, I just give statements to my accountant every year and he just does my taxes.
My favorite part.
Oh my Lord, dude.
When Fannie Willis said, yeah, I keep cash in my house. I keep cash in my house. And she goes, it's a considerable amount because that's how my dad taught me to do. As a black woman, I'm like, oh, fuck. What is that? Oh, F. I'm sorry. My bad. I dropped the F bomb. I was like, what does that have to do with it? Maybe you can edit that out. But she keeps cash in her house. And at first she implied she keeps a lot of cash in her house because that's what her dad taught her to do. And then she realized, oh, I've made a mistake here. She realized that IRS may look at this. She goes, well, I don't keep as much as he might wanted me to. But it's just an idiot, just an absolute idiot. Josh, did your mic come back on?
Yeah. So I didn't watch it to get me. I've been running around like a crazy person today trying to get everything done to get out of here. But I caught a couple of snippets. I think it's all kabuki theater. I think that first of all, if they have the goods on her, she knows it. Her attorneys know it, right? They know that through discovery because the prosecution has to share everything with the defense. Okay. So they know what they know what cards the prosecution has. And
well, maybe
for her,
because I think it's an evidentiary hearing, so I don't think there's discovery with this. I literally think that they just present because there's no trial. You know what I mean?
oh, is it an evidentiary hearing?
Yeah, and I think I'm
Okay.
not clear on it, but I think basically it just comes down to the judge. Like, yeah, this is a conflict of interest, and you can't bring this because of whatever, right?
Oh, gotcha. Okay. All right. So yeah, so she, hey, all right, then, she may not know what what cards the prosecution's holding. But I will say this about it. It was a great example, just the snippets that I saw. It was a great example that highlights the fact that she is a member of the most protected people in the United States, the most protected and privileged people in the United States, people like Fannie Willis.
Well, that's a good point. Arrogant was trending on Twitter, and it had like something crazy, like 225,000 mentions. And so I was like, "Huh, that's." In my mind, went. I wonder if they're talking about her on Twitter. So I went, I hit that, that key phrase, and sure enough, everyone was like, just so arrogant. It was quite a, and I got my little TV going in the background here, and it keeps showing her walk up to the stand looking like that busted can of biscuits. And it's like, why do you keep showing this, man? It's brutal. And I don't know. Here's the thing though, Josh, is I agree with you that I think this is much ado about nothing, because we're so bifurcated and divided in this country that half the country that's going to vote is looking at this and going, yes, you go, Queen, slay. That's the way it should be. She's telling them how it is. I love her. She's great. And the other half of people who are going to vote are digging their heels like, that is a piece of garbage. There's definitely a conflict of interest here. Even if she stays on, it shows that this whole thing is just a sham to try to set up President Trump. It's like, this is doing nothing to sway the average American's opinion on anything, because the average American is already dug in their heels. Now, Roger May, I don't know, Roger, what do you think? Do you think that stuff like this, like an independent is going to watch this, who's like, I really don't know if I like Trump or not, but I mean, do you think this makes any headway with independents, her behavior on the stand?
I don't think it sways one vote one way or another. I think, and Josh has said this, vehemently over the last several years, and I agree with him that I think most of the, and maybe it's because we're just out of touch. Like, maybe we're just out of touch with it, because I cannot fathom, much like 2020 and now, how anybody could be like, I'm on the fence. I really haven't decided yet. I mean, it was the same thing in 2020. Like, I don't understand who these people, well, and let me take it back. I guess if you're just not watching the news, you don't have TV on, you read a lot of fiction books at the home, and you don't have any kids, and that's the only way. By now, you have to have made your mind made up now, or have your mind made up now. What could change that, I think, is if you had a third party. Like, hey, you're waiting for a Joe Manchin to enter, right? You're waiting to see if RFK Jr. actually makes the national ballot, or if he's going to be a write-in or whatever. I could see that, but as far as like having your mind made up, I mean, Josh, 99% of the people out there, right, they've got to already have their minds made up one way or another.
I'm gonna tell you right now, there's not a whole lot of, when you say those independents, people who have made up their minds, there's not a whole lot of them. And even Joe Manchin went ahead and cleared out some of them today when he said that he would consider Mitt Romney as his running mate.
Jesus, I saw that. Oh Lord.
It was like, all right, well, there goes Joe Manchin. There goes the, people voting for Joe Manchin. I was like, dude, you ain't even got started yet, and you've already derailed your campaign. Like, really? You can pick me
because he's trying to carve out that center left, center right, which ain't gonna work.
It's not gonna work. No, it's not gonna work. I think, especially with this latest $96 billion bill, that the Senate just passed for Ukraine, Taiwan, and Israel. I think the whole, the whole center, I don't think there's a center anymore. People are either, you must pass this bill, democracy is at stake. And there's a whole lot of folks who are like, yeah, I'm pretty much done with the Mitt Romneys and the status quo. Now, The problem with that is people get fired up, but they're only going to get fired up for a couple hours. They're not going to, they're going to be fired up about something completely different tomorrow and the next day and the next day and the next day, because that energy won't carry, for most people, will not carry to November, when that's when they need to get fired up about it. And that's when they need to remember that Senator Cornyn from Texas, voted for that bill. They need to remember in North Carolina, they were going to say, hey, Tom Tillis voted for that bill, right? That's when they need to remember, and that's when they need to get fired up about it, but they won't do it. They won't do it. This will be long gone out of the news cycle, a million times over by the time they walk into a voting booth where it actually counts. People need to because elected officials, whether they're in the House of Representatives or the Senate, whether at the federal, state level, or even your local county commissioners and councils and stuff, a lot of people are not scared of the average voter. They're not. I'm gonna vote how I want to vote. And, then come campaign time, I'll jump on the campaign trail. I'm going to tell you what you want to hear. I'm going to tell you things like Mexico's going to pay to build the wall. I'm going to tell you things like, we're going to revise, 702. We're going to do this and we're going to do that. And people are like, oh man, well, he's the best. This guy or this girl is the best of the bad choices. So I'm just going to go with them, not knowing that they're the same people. The choice you vote for, whether you're voting for Mitt Romney or Joe Manchin, you're voting for AOC, and you're voting for, pick somebody, Denang Dick Blumenthal. They're all the same. They're all the same people. So just remember that when you walk into the voting booth.
So walk me off the ledge here, Roger, both you guys. So walk me off the ledge. Back in 2016, when it was time for the primary, I've told this story on the podcast numerous times. I'm on my way to vote in a primary, and I'm listening to the news. I think it's when Rush Limbaugh was still on, and I was just getting so fed up with everything. I didn't know who I was going to vote for on the way. I still hadn't made up my mind, and I'm driving to the primary polling station, and I got so sick of the BS I was hearing on the radio that I was like, screw it. You know what? I'm voting for Trump. Because I didn't even necessarily like him that much. I didn't know what he stands. He's super moderate, dude. The guy is basically a Democrat. When it comes to fiscally, he's a Democrat. He's not, he's a liberal. He's definitely not a conservative when it comes to spending. But it was like, you know what? Screw it. Screw everybody, screw the whole system. I don't like it. I'm voting for Trump. So walk me off the ledge here. The way I feel right now, and I'm not saying this is going to happen. This is how I'm feeling. It's like, Trump is saying some really stupid stuff out there. I don't care if it's hyperbole or not. He said some really dumb stuff. He's shooting himself in the foot. He cannot shut his mouth. Obviously, Biden, worst president. And I mean, he, definitely the worst, way worse than Jimmy Carter, way worse than he's done. So Biden's out. It's like in Trump, it's just like, and, I think the Matt Gaetzes of the world and stuff like that, who are just, I did mention Trump. You're right. I'm tired of it. I think Trump has kind of driven a wedge into the Republican Party. We're just kind of listless. There's nobody at the helm, and it's just like, you know what? Screw it. Screw all y'all. Screw all y'all. I'm voting for Robert F. Kennedy, even though I don't want him to be president. I think he's a loon in a lot of ways, but I want to cast my vote just to screw everybody, right? So why shouldn't I put my Ross Perot vote out there for Robert F. Kennedy Jr.? I'm doing devil's advocate here. So tell me, there may be somebody else out there thinking the same thing. So why shouldn't you do that, Roger? And then I want to hear Josh's view on that too.
Well, because he's a Democrat too. And when you talk about fiscally, he's a liberal. Guess what? So are all the conservatives now. We've talked about this before. When was the last time you've heard fiscal conservatism? They just had the FedEx founder, and I think he's the board chairman on Fox News the other day, talking about the national debt. And, it's just like, dude, when was the last time you've heard the national debt in the news at all? I mean, and that's part of the problem. When we talked about before with the right capitulating, the left, the way our political system is set up is the left pulls to the left when they've got power, and the right is supposed to pull to the right. But when the problem is the right doesn't pull as far to the right as the left pull to the left, well, that center moves, and that center continues to move, and it continues to move to the left to where there is no more right. It's the fortunately we've got Andy Biggs, which I'm a fan of out here in Arizona, generally speaking. But they don't stand on their principles. They don't stand on conservative values. For those things with Donald Trump, hey, he used to be a Democrat, and when you look at a lot of his social issues, they're liberal. They lean left. And I think fiscally, you can say lean left, but they all do now. And I'll tell you, and I'll kick it over to Josh. Put a pin in it, man. Mark my words. Josh brought up that $96 billion bill, of which $60 billion goes to Ukraine. Then the rest is divided between Taiwan and one other place.
Israel. And a lot, and billions go to Gaza too. Billions go to Gaza.
Right. So put a pin in it. This whole Russia threat thing, the anti-satellite weapon, that'll, by the way, anti-satellite stuff, the last thought, that's been out in the open news for about 20 years at least, right? You can gurgle that stuff. But I am telling you, that is a narrative that was pushed out by the GOP to give them an excuse to vote for this thing. Because now they can say, hey, you know what? I wasn't on board at first, but it's an existential threat, right? It's an existential threat. So we have to give Ukraine $60 billion, or these anti-satellite weapons are going to be the end of the world. I'm telling you right now, they all went to recess, right? They will come back. You know what? We've got some national security reports that, we just can't release to the public. And you know what? We just have to do it. And that's the excuse they're going to use. Guarantee it.
That's 100% the excuse they're going to use. And they were in the middle of debating, and when they got interrupted by this, this clear national security existential threat, they were in the middle of debating whether the information collected by the NSA and others under the FISA 702s, whether the United States government needed a warrant to access American citizens' information that got caught up in that dragnet. That's what they were debating. That should be a very common sense answer. Do you need a warrant to access Americans' personal information? Yes. It doesn't matter how it was captured. It doesn't matter how you got it. Do you need a warrant? Yes. It's just 100%. So they were, in the middle of that, and Tom Massey from Kentucky, he posted up, he was like, we were actually making some decent arguments and some headway, and they actually had a couple folks change their mind, be like, okay, yeah, no, I get it. And all of a sudden it got, that got blew up for this piece. You guys remember in the 80s, you guys remember Star Wars, and not the movie Star Wars, but basically when, Reagan came out and was like,
the Strategic Defense Initiative, SDI.
Yes.
Strategic, yeah.
Yeah. And it was essentially Star Wars, right? And we, part of the wall coming down in 1991, it was because we bankrupted the Soviets, because they were like, bro, they got space lasers. They're going to have space lasers. We've got to keep up with them. And now all of a sudden, the Russians, who economy hasn't been that great, they've been spending a lot of capital, military capital in on the eastern steppe, in Ukraine. Now all of a sudden they're like, hey, we got this space weapon, and you guys are going to have to rush to, give up. It's nuts, that. And then, Afghanistan was supposed to be Russia's Vietnam. They spent 10 years that we turned around and spent 20, so now here we are. The Russian, the Russia has space lasers, and we pass a 90. Well, the House is going to pass it. Let's just go ahead and say it's going to happen. The House is going to pass a $96 billion bill to give money to Ukraine. Because if we don't stop Russia there, they could take over all of Europe. According to a lot of these very smart, think tank, Ivy League educated brains that are out there. So the more that this goes on, look, I was all in 2003, in March in 2003, I was all on board for the Iraq invasion. Like I was 100%. I wish I had a time machine because I would go back to March of 2003 and I would kick my own ass for being stupid. Like I would do it, right? I was all on board. Dude, ever since I was a kid watching, growing up watching Red Dawn, I believed every intervention that the United States, injected themselves into was just. It was Panama. Yes, absolutely. Noriega's a thug and he's got to go. Reading history books, Grenada, Vietnam, everything. I was like, we were just in doing that as a nation. And thankfully, thank God, I took off the rose colored glasses and I've seen, and more, the more and more I've seen, barring a Red Dawn style attack on the homeland, I am becoming an isolationist. Washington warned us. Washington warned us about getting involved in the affairs of Europe, and nobody listened. And we decided to do it, and now here we are. And I don't see a good way out, especially not with the current administration, not with the current, pool of elected officials that we have. We are going to have troops in Ukraine this year. Well, we're going to have acknowledged troops in Ukraine this year. How about, I'll put it like that. I bet, guarantee.
That'd be an interesting bet. Be an interesting bet. That's a risky thing in an election year. Haven't really put a lot of thought into whether it'd be this year. I want to talk about the that imminent or whatever it was national security thing. You guys talked about it. This really grates on my nerves for the reasons you guys said. It's like the way I understand it from what's come out is Russia does not yet have the capability. So this isn't even something that's imminent. But Russia is exploring a capability to basically put nuclear weapons in space so that they can detonate nuclear weapons in space. And the way the nuclear weapon works in space is slightly different than the way it works in the atmosphere, because there is no oxygen in space. There's nothing for that. There's no fireball in space. It's basically just a giant radiation detonation. And what that would do, and like Roger and Josh said, this is nothing new. This is stuff that people have been talking about since like the 1960s, is detonating something in space. The Russians wanted to detonate nukes behind the moon, all this kind of stuff. But what it does is it leaves a giant radiation signature up in a certain area of space. That radiation's not going away, right? So satellites are passing through this radiation. It basically just wrecks them, just wrecks the satellites, because the satellites are shielded against the sun's radiation, the radiation of space, but not against that kind of neutron bombardment that would happen after a nuclear weapon. So it would shut down the satellite, systems of the United States, but also China, and also the ones that Russia has in France and Germany and all the satellites up there. So this is more of like an economic type weapon, because the U.S. would be affected more than any other country. So it's a different version of Star Wars, but it's a capability they don't even have yet. And I'm 100%, Roger, you're absolutely right. This was all just a ploy to get everyone on board to fund Ukraine. Because if we fund Ukraine, maybe we can shut down this program, which doesn't make any sense. Because people don't know Russian order of battle. The Russian rocket forces, I think it is completely different. Like, it's a completely different animal than because their rocket forces is a strategic thing. That encompasses their space program, nukes in space, space lasers, all that stuff. That is a completely different funding mechanism in Russia than the war in Ukraine, right? So the two are not related. They're not related at all. So even if, I got to vote for this Ukraine funding bill because, it may degrade their space program. It's not. It's not going to degrade their crappy space program. It's not. They're going to continue on with their research if it's even happening in the first place. And here's another thing. I guarantee you, when it comes to the technology and the road to putting a weapon like that in space, or something that's far more dangerous, far more impactful, I guarantee you China is ahead of Russia on all of these things. So why this is just so blatantly in your face how stupid do you think I am? How stupid do you think I am? This is a smokescreen. This was definitely not a terrorist threat or something, or we've got this intel that, you know, they're going to try another 9/11 type attack. It's not another spy balloon even coming across. I think a spy balloon is a far bigger national security threat than a weapon system that Russia is exploring, implementing. This is just so, it's so in your face. And this is why the erosion of our trust in the systems that run this country, the erosion is gone, because you know, now next time something like this comes out, it's the boy that cried wolf. It's the oldest story in the book. It's the boy that cried wolf. It's like next time something comes out, maybe it's real this time. But we're like, no, I've seen this movie before. I don't trust this. And now you got planes, you know, flying into buildings and stuff because we don't trust you anymore. It's like, this is when this thing came out, and it was just frustrating, Roger. I mean, it's very, very frustrating for me. And I don't trust it. I don't trust because I think the IC has definitely been completely corrupted at this point by the DC swamp. That's all there is to it.
100%.
Yeah, and it goes back to Josh, you know, talking about 2003. You know, there's always an ulterior motive, because I was like him. Hey, we need to be there. And those that understand foreign policy and history, I mean, you know, there's no right answer to it. You believe in one thing, believe in the other. There's arguments for force projection. You know, there's arguments for international involvement. But it's under the pretense that your motives are true and transparent, and your objectives are transparent. And when you just look at the last two between Iraq and Afghanistan, I mean, hell, we got to the point, especially like when we first went to Afghanistan, kill them all, level it, make them a, you know, football field, whatever. As we all did multiple deployments, I got down to like my last two, like, I'm not even sure what the objectives are anymore. Like, we're killing booger eaters. Okay. I get that. We're schwacking bad dudes, but like during my last one, we weren't even doing that anymore. So you sit there and you're like, so what are we actually here to do? And you know, even commanders at your highest level, you know, I mean, they get on TV and, you know, talk these big words and, you know, regional and aerial, you know, stability and staging, It's like, you actually don't know what the objective here is, do you? And when you look at the military involvement for a lot of these places, it should be an extreme short-term involvement. And then you bring in Department of State, NGOs, all this other stuff. Now, I'm not saying that there's not a need for places like Korea. Okay. When you look at South Korea, I think the objectives are pretty clear why we're there. Okay. But when you look specifically with Iraq and Afghanistan, I mean, hey, man, there's some ulterior motives going on, and the objectives continue to change over time, you know, and not just a couple of years, but decades. Luke, you look like you want to say something.
I think that they were searching for an objective after year 3 or year 2 in Afghanistan.
Yes, absolutely.
Because, and that continued for another 18 years. Now, we got into a Twitter argument, Josh, where some dude said we absolutely won in Afghanistan and Iraq. And he made a point that I'm going to say I agree with, but I understand the point, where it's like, you get down to a root level, like an animalistic type level. We were attacked in a way we had never really been attacked before in the past. Somebody's going to get their ass kicked. Okay. And that's just how it's going to be. That's the objective, is to show the world, you cannot do this. We're going to come in here and we're going to kick your ass. And it was happening like that. And I'll even say that Iraq was part of that motivation. Was, dude, you stirred the hornet's nest. Oh, you didn't even have anything to do. It's like a fight or something, you know, like a street fight. Some dude who had nothing to do with it's going to get his ass kicked too, because whoever got, you know, sucker punched is mad. And now Brock Lesnar is going to kick everybody's ass in the room. And Iraq was one of those people in the room that got their ass kicked because, oh shit, we really shouldn't mess with this dude. But the problem is, and that's no foreign policy type. That's just human. That's just human. That's just what we did. Now, we tried to make it into something else, and it turned into nation building in Afghanistan. It turned to weapons of mass destruction in Iraq. And I think that, you know, somebody could probably write one of our listeners, I don't know if Justin listens at all, but he could probably write a full on PhD thesis on just this, you know, like we had to strike back, we had to kick ass, and then it turned into just something completely different. But Because that dude he was trying to make that point that no, we showed the world. It's like, no, we showed the world for about 3 years. And then after that, it turned into a morass, and it turned into just so Josh, I mean, I don't know if you want to talk about that, that little argument of like, is it like Vietnam? Like, so compare this to Vietnam, right? For years, I was, again, I'll just lump myself in with Josh and Roger. It's the same way. The red-blooded, Red Dawn, original version, flag waving American, everything's justified. Even Vietnam, in my mind, I was like, that was part of the Cold War. That was the domino theory thing, right? So, I feel a little bit differently now. I think that Vietnam was handled similarly to Afghanistan and Iraq. But anyway, so Josh, I mean, we lost in Vietnam. The history books will say we lost, right? So will the history books say 100 years from now that we lost in Iraq and Afghanistan?
Yes, they should say that now. Don't even wait 100 years. They should say that now. When you turn around, okay, so when we talk, American interventionism, all right, we talk our foreign policy. When was the last time we injected ourselves into a situation, on the foreign stage where we were right, where we were morally right to do so since World War II?
What about Korea?
I don't even think Korea. What did at the time? What did the South Koreans want?
I don't know. I mean, Roger may be the better one to. That's so racist.
Racist. So Vietnam. All right. So yeah, it was part of the Cold War, part of the domino theory, but that again, it was the same excuse in Vietnam that they used in Iraq. If we don't fight them there, we will have to fight them here at home. Right? Vietnam was, if we don't fight the big red horde, in Vietnam, if we don't stop the spread of communism, then we're going to have to fight communists here at home. Where did that get us? It got us 58,000 dead, a lot of lost blood and treasure. And guess what? Much like the Taliban, the communists took over anyway. And if you talk to a lot of the Vietnamese, they don't care. They were like, I don't care if Ho Chi Minh's in charge. Like, I don't care that the communists are in charge.
Can I add one thing to the Vietnam thing real quick? Is what kind of changed my mind about the Vietnam deal, and I think I might have mentioned this in a podcast you weren't in, Josh, because you were off in Mexico or Italy or wherever you were, is that what came to light is that we did not understand the Vietnamese mindset, right? To your point, we didn't understand the Vietnamese mindset. It didn't matter if Ho Chi Minh was in charge. What did matter to every Vietnamese, whether they were North Vietnamese or South, as long as China's not in charge. But we did not understand that mindset, that if the Chinese would have come in and started calling the shots in Vietnam if we just let them take over Vietnam, if we let the NVA, the communists take over Vietnam, China would not have controlled them. Not at all. No. And if they tried, China would have found themselves in a war with Vietnam.
Exactly. And a lot of people don't understand that. The French did. It took the French a while to figure that piece out, and they finally, after Dien Bien Phu, they were like, hey man, maybe, maybe this ain't the place for us. We didn't understand the Vietnamese mindset, and you're absolutely right. They didn't care if communism took over and was in charge, as long as the Chinese weren't in charge. The Afghans were the exact same way. The Afghans don't care that the Taliban are in charge. They just don't want non-Afghans in charge. Nobody understood the Afghan mindset. It was the same thing with the majority of Iraqis. They didn't care that Saddam was in charge. I don't know how many Iraqis I had tell me, hey man, when Saddam was in charge, guess what? I didn't have to worry about getting blown up when I went grocery shopping. The electricity worked 24/7 and my water worked 24/7. Then you guys decided to show up and now everything is falling apart all around me. So tell me, when did I have it better? you go back to this, our follies around the world, you know, I'll give it, World War II was just because of what was occurring, you know, with the Holocaust. You know, a lot of people did not want the Nazis in charge, obviously, for obvious reasons, right? And so World War II was just. I have no issue with us being involved in World War II. You know, and you can talk about, you know, yeah, you know, 100%. It was absolutely existential, right? You know, I mean, the attack on Pearl Harbor proved that. But even then, you know, you take a look at that was why, you know, FDR allowed some people, you know, say, you know, there's information you could go either way with it, you know, saying, well, FDR, we knew about the attack on Pearl Harbor, but we had to let it happen because that gave FDR the justification to enter World War II, you know, even after he ran on a ticket of, you know, we're not getting involved in, you know, foreign affairs, you know, blah, blah. But, you know, the imperial Japanese would have shown up in San Francisco Bay. Like they would have shown up on American soil and not just, you know, on some obscure islands in Alaska no one's ever heard of. The Nazis would have shown up on the East Coast. You know, I mean, they were already running subs up and down the coast. So that war was just. But when you start going and you start taking a look at the others, I really struggle to, you know, to see why we were justified in doing what we did to Noriega in Panama. Right, when we installed the Shah in, you know, the 1950s in Iran, which set up the Iranian Revolution. Yeah, where did that get us? The same thing with the 2014 Maidan Revolution in Ukraine. And how did Haiti turn out for us? You know, it's, well, he's a dictator, but he's our dictator, right? We installed him. Libya, Egypt with Mubarak. How'd that work out? We continue, you know, like you said, it's like, you know, well, people, you know, wonder why the trust in the United States government and the trust in government agencies is non-existent. Well, I don't understand how people think it can be existent at all. You take a look at McNamara and how he intentionally escalated the war in Vietnam, the worst sec death since Donald Rumsfeld. You know, it's just.
What about Austin? Where does he rank on that?
Austin? Well, I don't know. Is that dude still alive? Is he dead or like what's going on with him?
He's back now, I think, right? Or no, he comes back Tuesday. He comes back Tuesday because of the 4-day.
I still think he's in the midst of his transition surgery.
He's getting his Audi turned into an innie. You know, I did see I sent you guys the photo of him. So the Secretary of Defense for the United States has an American flag in his office, as he should. He also has a Ukrainian flag in his office, which is the same size as the American flag. Now, call me crazy, but I don't think any, you know, official, elected or appointed official should have a foreign flag in their office. It should be the American flag, and that's it. So we have got to stop going around and getting involved in everybody's affairs around the globe. We have got to stop it because we are setting ourselves up for failure. And if you guys see the latest out of Armenia and Azerbaijan is preparing for a full-scale invasion of southern Armenia. And I don't know, you know, for our listeners out there, some people might wonder why we care about this. Well, Turkey, France, Russia, they are all heavily involved. So you have NATO partners involved in this, and they're not all on the same side. So people better pay attention to it because, you know, one, we could actually have NATO allies, you know, on opposite sides of the battlefield, supplying and going at each other. And then you inject Russia into it. And God, man, could you imagine? I bet people on Capitol Hill are salivating at the opportunity, you know, to be like, well, look at Russia. They're escalating things. Oh, the Russia's attacking our NATO allies. Article 5, let's go. They are salivating at that opportunity.
And what is Russia's one of Russia's top 3 strategic goals? Dissolve NATO, drive a wedge in NATO. And yeah, dude, it's it's a precarious. I love that conversation. I love that conversation. Just wars, unjust. I think that the Reagan years are really good for those. And even I'll even give Bush Senior some credit. When Iraq invaded Kuwait, right? Iraq invaded Kuwait, and a lot of people, crap all over, George H.W. Bush for not finishing the job. Well, George H.W. Bush didn't make the mistake that his son did. What I'm saying is the Reagan, he had Grenada under Reagan. That was a real quick one. Heartbreak Ridge, that was a real quick war. It made us feel really good about ourselves. Freed 6 medical students or whatever it was. HW, we went in there and kicked ass. Reagan bombed Tripoli. Just bombed the hell out of them for the when there was the terrorist ties to the Pan Am flight. He bombed the shit out of them. They're just, and he flew around Italy or not Italy. He flew around Spain to do that. NATO's like, nope, you're not going to use our airspace. Okay, well, we'll just take our F-111 aardvarks and fly around your little peninsula, bomb the hell. And then you didn't hear much from Gaddafi because Gaddafi was making noise before that. He went into Panama. I don't think that was that was crooked as hell, but it was quick.
There was more really to quick. Panama, though.
There was a lot more to Panama.
When you look at like Noriega, I mean, federally indicted, drug trafficking, but also ties to U.S. intel services.
That's right.
Like
100%.
Right? So
School of the Americas, man. 100%. He was a student at the School of Americas, but then, George H.W. goes
undergraduate.
In, builds, yeah. But H.W. builds a coalition of everybody on earth except Israel and goes in there and just kicks the hell out of Iraq and backs right back out. It's like these were quick. These were not drawn out. Were they just, I don't know. But at least they were quick. Now we're just, the American people are a nerd to it. And Josh, I mean, I hope you're wrong about U.S. troops, acknowledged U.S. troops on the ground in Ukraine. I don't know what that would look like, but I hope you're wrong about that because guess what, American people? Your government now believes that you don't care if we're in a place for 20 years. You don't care if we're in a conflict for 20 years that costs more than all of our wars combined. And talk about Afghanistan. It's like, nobody cares anymore because it doesn't affect them. It's like what we were saying the other day. Maybe there should be a war tax, but like Roger says, he doesn't think a war tax would work. And I tend to agree with him.
Yeah. And I think when you look at, well, I'll go back to like Josh's, question. I mean, I guess you could probably argue Grenada. You could probably argue that. I think you could argue South Korea. Josh is giving the big thumbs of disapproval, but the rest of those, I'm just trying to think off the top of my head and a little bit of gurgling. I don't know. There's too many other foreign interventions. I mean, again, depends on what you think we should be using the military for and what our foreign policy should be. And, it's kind of, we always pick on the libertarian parties every year because, generally speaking, I kind of dig like 99% of what they say, maybe 90%. But my issue has always been their foreign policy because they believe in basically zero, right? I'll read this right from their platform real quick. When it comes to, international relations and that type of stuff. But it's American foreign policy should emphasize peace with all nations, entangling alliances with none. We would end the current U.S. government policies of foreign intervention, including military and economic aid, tariffs, economic sanctions, and regime change. We recognize the right of all people to resist tyranny, to defend themselves and their rights. We condemn. Now, a lot of that stuff right there just contradicts itself. It's like you recognize, okay, I guess maybe you recognize it, but you don't do anything to help. So that's always been my big issue with the Libertarian Party is that I don't think you can say, well, no, we're just hands off on everything. But I do think you have to look and say, hey, what's an existential threat to us and our way of life? And then I do think that you look at, hey, there are other, when you look at the 70s and 60s and the 50s, when you look at, Vietnam War, when you look at Korea, Korea actually ran into the beginning of the, Second Indochina Wars, Vietnam. So there's a lot of entanglement there. But the problem that you have now is that it's a lot more complicated. It's a global economy. Like one of you were just saying, right, with what's going on with Azerbaijan and Armenia. It's like, hey, it's a global economy. You now have energy. When I look back, and again, I wasn't born for a lot of this stuff, but or I was very young, but there really wasn't a whole lot of talk about energy independence, where we're getting our natural gas from, this and that. The internet wasn't around yet. The economy, there wasn't a global economy. Global economy, right, was based out of New York City, Times Square, or the World Trade Center. That was like the global economy. That was it. And so your real tie overseas was military, Department of State, foreign affairs, that type of stuff. It's not like that anymore. And so you go in and so I guess my point being is you really have to go back and define, like, hey, what is our role? Because what you do on a military basis may not jive, or what you may do on a defense, because your foreign affairs or defense policy may not jive with economic policies, right? Energy policies. You look at Ukraine as a prime example. I mean, look how many people, the EU up until 2 weeks ago said, hey, we're done. Like, we're not funding this anymore. Why? Because you know what? It gets cold in the winter. And you know what you need in the winter to stay warm? You need oil and you need gas.
Well,
right. So it's a lot more complicated, I think.
At least the Europeans, I think up until a couple of weeks ago, were like, where is the off-ramp? There is no off-ramp. No one's proposing an off-ramp. But Putin didn't do himself any favors with the interview with Tucker. I was kind of hoping that there would be more to that interview with Tucker Carlson, but it was a big popcorn fart. Nothing came out of that. This little history lesson about Russia, whatever. So look, Josh, here's the thing. I've grown to respect the U.S. Navy more and more, because keeping shipping and sea lanes open is very important. But the problem is, I think the rest of the world has forgotten or just taken for granted the U.S.'s role in keeping shipping lanes open worldwide. That's why we have, one of the reasons we have aircraft carriers. That sort of force projection, or carrier groups, I should say, that sort of force projection, it's like, do not mess with us. Now, here's where we've gone sideways. It's like back in the 50s, especially the 50s. Dude, the 50s would have been a great time to be alive. It really would have been a great time to be alive, because the whole world is like, holy crap, these people have nuclear weapons, and they actually used them. They actually used them. Now, I know the 50s were kind of crazy in Africa and Southeast Asia. I understand that. But we've gotten away from this. It's like, why can't we be more like Rome, back at their height, where it's just like, hey, dude, you do you. If what you're doing doesn't affect the citizens of Rome eating their bread, cool, do you. But if you mess up, we're coming down with the whole might of the legions on your little tiny village. We're going to burn it to the ground, and that's going to be that. So why can't foreign policy be like, we're the big stick, dude. Just, hey, you can do you. You can do whatever you want to do. Just don't mess with us. You shut down this shipping lane, Iran, we're going to send you back to the Stone Age. You are responsible for your proxies. And if you can't control them, that's your bad. We're nuking Tehran. It's like, why can't we just like speak softly and carry a big stick? Don't mess with the U.S. Let it be like the 1950s where the Soviet Union is trying to catch up because, we're the only big kid on the block. Because we could be that. We could be the only big kid on the block. Because, Josh, you may say that Americans are wussies, but the rest of the world, especially Europe, they're even worse, dude.
Yeah, no, I have no doubt about that. One of the reasons why we don't win anymore, people are like, okay, well, and Roger brought up a great point. Some of those fights were very quick. Desert Storm, very quick. But you take a look at what we did. There was not that, there's a lot of civilians out there on the battlefield, when the Iraqis dug in their T-62 tanks up to the turrets and sat there and stuff. But we carpet bomb people. There would be B-52s just drop it. I mean, it was like, it might as well have been Dresden. We carpet bomb people. You take a look at the Highway of Death, the retreating Iraqi army. It got so bad and to the point where, Schwarzkopf and Powell had to step back and say, okay, hey, we have to stop. Because we are just, they were killing people by the bushel.
One of the reasons they stopped, because we were so close to decimating, not even decimating. Decimating means you wipe out 1/10. We were so close to wiping out 9/10 of the Iraqi army that would have upset the power balance in the entire region. That's one of the reasons they backed off. It's like, holy crap, if we do this, Iran can invade and take over the entire country.
Yep. And and so yeah, a lot of folks don't know that. That's a good point. But we got away from total war. We got away from that. Right. And that was, that was how we won World War II, was total war. I was listening to a podcast. I was cheating on C3 a little bit, about the Imperial Japanese Empire, and why the Japanese, writ large, especially the Japanese army, was so, when you fought them, you knew it was like fighting. It was like it was like coming into contact with foreign fighters in the Middle East. You knew when it was a foreign fighter versus your homegrown Iraqi. Like, you knew. When they interviewed the Japanese fighter, he was the last one to surrender somewhere in the Philippines, like in 1973 or 1974 or something crazy. This guy finally came out of the caves, and surrender. But it's like, where does that level of, where does that level of zealotry come from? And they went back, this episode, it's hours long, but it talks about, it digs all the way back into the Shogun era, right? The samurai era of Japan, and how that mentality came about. In Japan, believed total war. And Luke brought up the Romans. Bellum Romanum. It was basically the way war the Romans did it, and it was, when the Romans showed up, it was either you get to surrender, and if you didn't surrender, that was it. Everybody was going to die. And those who didn't die were going to be enslaved. We got away from that, especially in the Balkans. We got away from that in, even in our dust up in Mogadishu. But really in the Balkans, we got away from that. We started embedding reporters, in Desert Storm with, military units, and people actually started seeing what was going on. Nobody got live images from Dresden. Nobody got live images from Omaha Beach. Nobody got live images when we were, as Patton said, greasing the treads of our tanks with their guts. But people started getting live images, out of Desert Storm. People started getting almost live images, out of the Balkans and stuff like that. And they're like, we can't do this. We have to stop this. And so now you go into a place like Afghanistan with very restrictive ROE, and you can't wage total war. Right. In total war, it would be very quick. It would be over very quickly, because, you start dropping nuclear weapons, your adversary is going to capitulate because they can't withstand that. That was the main reason. Pick up any history book worth, half a grain of salt. And that was the very reason why the Imperial Japan surrendered after the second atomic bomb was dropped. They're like, we cannot sustain this. And we can't, we can't absorb this. So if we are going to win wars again, they have to be just, and we have to be able to wage total war. And that means civilian casualties, then so be it. Right. I wouldn't expect somebody to attack the United States and be like, we're going to try and minimize civilian casualties, so we're only going to hit, military targets. You would never take the United States that way. You only want to hit military targets, fine. There's 300 plus million Americans, heavily armed, that aren't anywhere near those military targets. So best of luck. They came in and they started raising, Main Street America. I'd be like, okay, well, I don't like it. I'm gonna fight them, but I get it. Right. So again, I have no faith in the current crop of elected officials in Washington, D.C. to, one, get us into a just war, two, get us into a war. And you guys brought up, what is the clearly defined objective? Iraq, Desert Storm, there's a clearly defined objective. It was to push Saddam Hussein out of Kuwait. That was a clearly defined objective, right? Push Saddam Hussein out of Kuwait. Our objectives in Iraq and Afghanistan were free the shit out of them, we're going to spread democracy. And you're like, okay, well, what does that mean? Right? Until they can stand on their own, but like they don't want to stand on their own. They were fine with what was, you know, what they had before. Like they don't want this. So it's
Yeah, don't read that comment I just put in the chat.
No, I'm not.
Don't bother.
I don't read. I don't read the comments out loud that goes in the chat. I don't know why you guys.
That's
do.
your thoughts in your head.
Yeah,
but you know how quickly that
it
changed, though, right? When you look at from Desert Storm and how we fought, you know, conflict back then, to, you know, Iraq, Afghanistan, and recent. I mean, how quickly that's changed. Because here's the thing: look at what's going on in Israel and the Gaza Strip right now with the attack on Rafah, right? Which is basically that's it. I mean, you take that, it's over, it's done. And look at the international pressure. You even got Biden coming out saying it's been over the top. It's like these dudes flew hang gliders into a marketplace and schwacked civilians. Okay. And held hostages and still hold hostages, some of them being Americans, right? But it's condemned. It's frowned upon by the international community. You can't even hold warfare like that anymore without having, you know, 5, 10, 15, 20 other countries come up. No, well, no, even in America, we've got our own lawmakers. They're gone too far. Really? Really? So you tell me what the appropriate response should be for what Hamas did to the Israelis. You know, nobody will come out and say that. But how quickly that's changed from, you know, the Desert Storm years to now. And so I guess my next question would be, let me take it back to what you said with Tucker Carlson and Putin. I didn't watch the whole interview. I caught most of the snippets. And it's, I do think it was a missed opportunity for Putin to come out and clearly define objectives that probably were untrue. Okay. Let's make no mistake about it. Like, I don't think this guy's going to come up like, hey man, this is all I want. And once I get this, we're good. But he failed to take advantage of that platform and lay out some clearly defined objectives themselves and say something like, hey, you know what? We had a Minsk 1 and 2 agreement. This is what was agreed upon. And that's kind of where I'm going. No more, no less. Right. I think he missed that. Right.
I don't know, man. I think he's still okay. Because my takeaway from the whole thing, because I took the time to actually listen to the whole thing, and I know a little bit about Russian history. I know a little bit about Ukraine history, right? Ukraine, I'm no Putin lover, dude. Let's get that straight. Even though we're accused of being Putin lovers on Twitter all the time, but he has a point, dude. Ukraine is, I mean, like, you talk the Muscovite mindset, like you go to the kingdom of Muscovy way back, you know, 1400 years ago. Basically, Russia kind of actually started in Ukraine, you know, to boil it down.
Right.
And, you know, he gave that whole history lesson. And I'm not going to say it was a missed opportunity. I'm not going to say that. I just think he's not ready for that opportunity, because my takeaway from his entire thing, his entire soliloquy was, we're going to take over everything. We're not stopping at Donbass and Crimea. Ukraine is ours. Ukraine is us. We are them. They are us. They lost their way, and we're going to bring them back to the light. I don't think in the back of his mind that's his true objective. But I think he knows that was going to go out to a wide audience, and he's not ready to discuss an off-ramp yet for whatever reason. They've got their intel. This is pretty good. All they really have to do is watch the news and see how dysfunctional our government is. And he's just not ready to have that discussion yet, which tells me, Josh, that the Russian order of battle from the battle of, or the Stalingrad siege is alive and well. He is confident, somewhat confident, that he has the will of the Russian people to keep sending his troops into the meat grinder, which is what they have done since for the past how many decades. That's just their order of battle. I don't think that, you know, it's tough to discern what's propaganda and what's not. You know, how much is Russia willing to sacrifice? How much are they not? But I'll go out on a limb and say that Ukraine is taking much heavier losses, big picture, than Russia is right now. Russia has more people. It's got more landmass. It's got more money. Well, without the, without the help of the United States, they've got more money to keep sending those troops into the tank, into the meat grinder with T-52 tanks or whatever. But they're definitely holding their lines. So it's like, I think if Putin was ready for an off ramp, to kind of address your point, Roger, if Putin was ready for an off ramp, I think he would have broached it there. Hey, I'm ready. I'm ready to talk about, keeping Donbass and Crimea, but I don't think he's laboring under any, assumptions that he's going to take all of Ukraine. And to Josh's point, yeah, dude, Russia, I think it's very clear they're not going to be able to take Poland. Because you think Ukraine's a tough fight? Oh, bro, wait till you come through the Suwalki Gap, brother. You're going to have a fight on your hands with the Poles. Because even take away Article 5 at that point. But anyway, Josh, so the demented ravings of a madman you just listened to. I mean, what do you think it might be going through Putin's head right now? He had an opportunity, like Roger said, he had an opportunity to hit that off ramp, but he didn't. Not that I heard.
Yeah, no, I didn't hear it either. And he absolutely had an opportunity. Because that message went far and wide. I forget how many, tens, maybe 100 million people watched that within, the first couple hours of coming out. So, even if Putin doesn't have the will of the Russian people to continue that fight, he will bend them to his will. I mean, he is not above making his political opponents, disappear or fall out of windows. So as far as what's going through his mind, I don't know. I think he knows that he cannot take Poland. He knows that he is not going to take all of Ukraine. He knows this. Why he's continuing to just grind away, at the Donbass and Crimea after he took those in 2014 without much of a fight. And that goes back to, what you were saying about your time there and that Muscovite mindset. It's like, well, we're Russian anyway. We're not Ukrainian, so, he had those, and I don't know what the play is with him, continuing, because you're right. He had a perfect opportunity for an off ramp, but he didn't take it. But I think he will when he's good and ready. Maybe he's holding out for additional concessions, from the Ukrainians, because Ukraine, from a fighting standpoint, from a military age male standpoint, I don't know how much more they can absorb. They have taken a lot of casualties, and I don't know what the percentage of their population was military age males at the onset of this, but it's definitely been depleted.
Josh, do you think that Putin might be making a statement right here, like what we were talking about earlier about, hey, you attack the United States and you're gonna suffer the consequences? Not that Ukraine attacked Russia, but do you think that he might be making a statement with, this is what we're willing to do, this is what we're willing to absorb? I mean, do you think that might be maybe part of it?
I hadn't thought of it like that, but that's a good point. Possibly. Hey, this is what we are willing to endure, so you better think twice, about crossing the border. And we're getting ready to add Finland to NATO. As whenever Hungary decides that they're going to do it. It was funny, they finally got Turkey on board, and now Hungary's like, well, yeah, I don't know. Again, I don't, NATO, it's, to me, NATO was a great alliance against the Warsaw Pact, but honestly, NATO became irrelevant with the fall of the Soviet Union. It became irrelevant, and all it's become, since then, is just another way for lawmakers on every side in every country in NATO to launder U.S. taxpayer dollars. Finland is going to become yet another country that is going going to suck off, the U.S. taxpayer teat.
I,
There was a Belgian general last week came out and talked about the ammunition production in Europe and why it was so bleak. And he flat out said, he's like, because we relied on the United States. We relied on the United States to supply us ammo. That's why Europe can't produce its own. So and you're just like, it's, case in point after case in point.
I think it's a mistake to bring Finland in, dude. I really do. Like if you're trying to hold the alliance together, a slightly bigger mistake if you're trying to hold an alliance together is bringing Greece and Turkey in. Dude, those two countries are basically at war all the time, and they always have been. Yeah. They always have been. But Finland, the Finns are like Hungarians, dude. They're just different, dude. They might as well not even exist on the European continent. Finns are different people, the same as Hungarians. They're just different. Even their languages, dude. You go back and you study linguistics. People don't know where those two languages came from. Hungarian and Finnish. They don't know. It's like how we can't even figure out where these languages came from because these people are so weird and insular and different than the rest of us. It's like Albanians too. But anyway, I don't know. Roger, you were ready to say something. I had to jump in and say, dude, Finland's different. You don't know what kind of can of worms you're getting into, NATO.
So this is for either one of you. Article 5, does that ever get invoked? I mean, let's be for real here, okay? Let's say it doesn't have to be Russia. Like what I'm saying from here forward, when you look at Turkey and Greece, always like, do you think Article 5 from here forward actually ever gets invoked? And they're like, okay, you know what? There was an attack on one, there's an attack on all, and we're going to war.
Well, it was invoked September 11th. I don't know what day, but after the 9/11 attacks, it was invoked. But that's a good question. I don't know, because Article 5, like Roger said, it's attack on one is an attack on all. So basically that's, if Russia comes through the Suwalki Gap and, tries to take, the Baltics and Poland, tries to cut them off. That's that's right. Like Josh said, the first and only time was 9/11. And Roger's asking now.
Which is an easy one, though, because that was seen as a terrorist event, yada, yada, yada. Right?
And it was an easy one. That was an easy one. That was a slam dunk. Now, I don't know, because everyone's got to agree. NATO is a bureaucratic mess, and everyone's got to agree that, yes, Article 5 is definitely invoked. So Spain could come out and say, yeah, we're not on board with this, and it just kind of dissolves the whole thing, because NATO is just an alliance. It's a treaty. It's an alliance. It doesn't really hold you to anything. So if Spain says, nope, we don't agree with this Article 5 thing, but every other country does agree with it, and they go to war with Russia if they come into Poland, that doesn't mean that Spain is getting attacked by the rest of NATO. It's just like they didn't abide by their treaty obligations, and a treaty is just a piece of paper. That's all it is. So, Roger, I think that's a really good question. I think there have been discussions about that, especially back when I was in Slovenia, seeing the front page on that and hearing what people were saying, not just in Slovenia, but in other European countries, talking to, generals and colonels and stuff like that. It's like, we're not sure if some of these people will be on board with this if the stuff actually goes down. So, Josh, like Article 5, does it even mean anything anymore?
Well, it depends. They've got to invoke it first. Obviously, like you said, 9/11, that was a softball. Does it mean anything? Well, we won't know until they try and invoke it. And if all the countries jump on board and vote, yeah, we're doing this, then yeah, it means something. If all the countries, if you got a couple of holdouts, are like, yeah, man, we're not on board with that. You start talking Turkey, and some of the others, and they're like, yeah, we're not on board with that. Then, well, it's not worth the piece of paper it's written on.
Yeah, it's funny with Article 5 also, if, Germany invaded France again, as they're apt to do, as we've seen in history, Article 5 would not be invoked because they're both NATO members.
Yeah. Well, it's either France or Poland. You give a German a rifle, he's going to start marching east. So we might find, I don't know, man. Potentially, I don't know, but you talk about the Suwalki Gap. there's a very good possibility that we find out, because, you know, for those who don't know, so there's a little strip of land that connects Belarus to Kaliningrad. I say a strip of land, a piece of land that you can actually put, military maneuver, forces through, and it runs basically. It's on the Lithuania-Polish border. It's all jammed right up in there. Well, Kaliningrad belongs to Russia. All right, and Russia's long wanted that back. They want a land bridge to it. Right now, they don't have a land bridge.
I guarantee my mom doesn't know about Kaliningrad, and there's probably a couple other people. You don't have to admit that you didn't know, but Kaliningrad would be like Alaska, right? Alaska belongs to the United States, but the continental United States does not have a contiguous border with Alaska. That's like Kaliningrad. Kaliningrad is sandwiched. It's like an island, but it's not an island. It's not landlocked. It has a coast, but it's separate from the landmass of Russia. So that belongs to Russia, like Alaska belongs to us, but it's surrounded by enemies. Like, think of Canada as like China, right? So that's Kaliningrad is separate. I just want to clarify that.
Yeah, no, good call. Yeah, it's sandwiched in between Lithuania and Poland. Then it has coastline in the Baltic Sea. Russia wants to be able to access Kaliningrad via the land, via land from Belarus, who's basically their proxy and whatever they want to do. Even then, Article 5 getting invoked, if Russia rolled through Belarus and was like, no, we're going to go ahead and take the Suwalki Gap. Man, I don't know.
It depends on the situation.
I don't see Turkey voting for that.
It depends on the situation, right? Because people have been talking about, you, Josh, have actually been talking about little green men, right? Little green men within Lithuania, within Estonia, Latvia, or maybe Estonia, Lithuania. But little green men, and when we say little green men, we're talking about like information operations, psychological operations, because believe it or not, folks, yes, Lithuania, Estonia, and Latvia, those Baltic countries, are members of NATO, but there are people that live near the border of Russia or near the border with Kaliningrad who see themselves as Russian. Read Soviet. They do. They still speak Russian. Their kids are forced to speak Lithuanian in school. But when they come home to, mom and dad or grandma and granddad, they're like, no, we're Russian. You speak Russian in this household. It's a very strange situation over there. So if you start influencing that population, it's like, no, we're a Russian solidarity movement in like a quarter of the country, kind of like Donbass and kind of like Crimea is like, no, we want to be reunited with the motherland. Now you've got an argument. Now Russia has an argument. We're just trying to liberate our people. They're the ones asking for it. And the little green men are in there, doing their influence operations. And it may not even be boots on the ground because now we've got the internet and stuff. It's like, I'm saying that I'm to your point, Josh, what I'm saying is it depends, because what's the justification for, invoking Article 5? No, this quarter of the population, they just want to be part of their homeland again. So let's just give them what they want. Russia is smart, dude. They're very smart. They're chess players, and they're much smarter than us, especially when it comes to, existential stuff. Because I'm sorry to keep going on. I know Roger wants to talk, but for Russia, this is very existential. It's very existential. You've got an expansionist treaty organization eating up countries around your border. It's like, think of it in reverse. And I'm not sympathizing with them. They're our enemy, even though I think they should be our friend, because China is the real existential threat. But it's just like, I understand where they're coming from, I guess is what I'm saying.
Dude, I think you're right. I mean, you're spot on. And I think when it's funny because when you look at historical ethnicities, who they belong to, I mean, pretty much the rest of the world is like that, except for the United States, because we have an identity crisis, right? For whatever, heck, we have a gender crisis. Half the people don't even know what gender they are or think they can change their gender tomorrow, much less what their ethnicity is or where they came from. So I don't know, man, it brings up a whole lot because when you look at Article 5, you look at how we're all interconnected now. And when you look at, Granted, the EU is different than NATO, but when you look at currency moving to the euro, when you look at the EU, pretty much becoming the governing body for all European nations, everything, right? Policy wise, energy wise, this and that. When you talk about energy, when you talk about resources, supplies, manufacturing, I think a lot of that was done because I think a lot of those European nations realize, or NATO nations realize that, or the bigger players, that we might actually have a problem getting everybody on board. And one of the things, again, maybe not the sole reason, but I think one of the reasons why you have all of that is for them to kind of enforce their will. Like, you will support this, because if not, we'll bring down the heavy hand of the rest of the NATO nations or whatever. So it's, Josh, but so many of the RAND Ivy League educated analysts don't understand that. And that's true, because everything, one of the things that we've been very, very fortunate with, all three of us collectively, is that we're traveled, right? Whether it be for personal pleasure or, through previous military work, we've traveled and we've seen this stuff. So it's like, when you look at specifically like Afghanistan or Haiti or Bosnia, it's like, dude, don't get me wrong, books are great to read. It gives you a lot of background info. But the minute we got on the ground with Afghanistan and they're like, yeah, we're teaching these guys to fly Apaches. Yeah, that ain't ever going to happen. Okay, I'm telling you that right now. Anybody who's ever been over there knows that was never, ever, ever going to happen, right? But you read in the books, like, people just don't understand. I mean, I remember when I was going to a military school, and I had to do a correspondence because I was deployed. And back then they had CDs. Right now, for our younger audience, CDs were these little round disc things. They were shiny on one side, and it actually held like music and data and videos and stuff like that. So I'm downrange, and I get an email, and they're like, "Hey, we need to send this to you. We need an address." I'm like, "Well, I give them the fob stuff," and they're like, "Well, no, we need like a street address type thing." Anyway, long story short, they're looking for 123 Maple Street, Anytown, America, zip code, whatever. It's like, dude, that's not how it works here. And they're like, well, we can just send it to like a local DHL or something like this. I'm like, do you really think like downtown coast, there's like a FedEx or a Kinko's or a UPS store where I can go? I'm like, dude, it's a mud hut. There's no number on. You think they have mailboxes here? I mean, it's just they don't understand outside of what they've read in their little, what was the Frommer's Traveler Guide or whatever. Outside of that, like, they have no concept of what's going on. So it's, and we don't say this to make fun of folks and this and that. It's just, there is a very, Josh hit it on the head. There's a very different approach and perspective when you're an analyst, or even just stateside and you're reading things through the news, versus, if you've been lucky enough to travel some of these places. It gives you a unique perspective of what's going on, right?
So one thing I'll say is to your point, cultures are different, right? You talked about the Afghans with Apaches. Look, there are smart folks in Afghanistan who are educated, who have Western educations. Maybe they were educated in India, but that's the 0.01% of the population. It just is. The rest of the population who are in the Afghan National Army, maybe that's their only choice, maybe a little bit like our armed forces. I don't know. But I believe, and I don't think Roger was trying to say this. I'm not calling him out. I'm just saying, I believe that there are some Afghans who could learn to fly an Apache. But as with Josh's Second Amendment thing, it's like, it's great. You have a nuke. That's good. You have a nuke. You have an ICBM in your backyard. You're going to have 500 people to maintain that thing. It goes back to the Apache helicopter and, even a Black Hawk or whatever. You can find dudes in Afghanistan who could fly that. But good luck maintaining that thing. I saw the Afghan maintenance crews, and guess what? There were 3 Afghans and like 15 American contractors maintaining that aircraft. So yeah, it's like, it's just not going to work. To Roger's point,
let me clarify real quick. Outside the maintenance piece, I personally am not flying in any aircraft that any Afghan that I came into contact with is the pilot of.
Okay. Well, yeah, that's a fair point.
Are you?
No. Well, there are a couple that it's like if they had the education, one or two, if they had the education and the training, yes, I would trust them to fly an aircraft maintained by an American maintenance crew. Period. So, okay, I want to change it up just a little bit, if y'all don't mind. So, a significant event happened, and Ben Shapiro made a really good point. It's probably the last remaining semi-official holiday that Americans have, because there's problems with every holiday. July 4th, nobody's patriotic anymore. Thanksgiving, that's people have a problem with Thanksgiving. Christmas, that's the birth of Christ. That leaves out the Muslims and the Jews and all this stuff. But the one holiday we can all kind of agree on is the Super Bowl. So the Super Bowl happened, and there was all this lead up, right? I'm a Patrick Mahomes fan. I'm not a team fan for the NFL. I'm not. I'm a player fan. If I like a player, I'm going to root for that player. And I like Christian McCaffrey. I think he's a really good running back. I like him. I like his style, but I like Patrick Mahomes better. So I was rooting for the Chiefs. And as you may understand, I knew Josh was going to say that, but I know you're going to have an opinion about this, Josh, because I'm going to bring something up. So, as you may or may not have noticed, there's a lot of Taylor Swift fans in the United States right now. And we don't have much time left, but Taylor Swift is dating a tight end on the Kansas City Chiefs called Travis Kelce, right? And that's a big thing. I want to kick this directly to Josh. So I'm watching the game, and a lot of people are watching the game because number one, it's the Super Bowl, but number two, now you got a lot of Swifties watching the game because Taylor Swift is now dating a roided up, NFL player. Ask Nicole Brown Simpson how that worked out, but let's leave that aside for now. I guarantee there were a lot of, early 20s girls, maybe late teens girls watching the Super Bowl who would never have watched it before, just for a glimpse of Taylor Swift here and there. And there were a lot of theories out there about how Taylor Swift is a psyop, and if the Chiefs win, Travis Kelce is going to propose to her, and all this and that, and then she's going to endorse Biden, and it's a big psyop directed by the CIA. So leaving that aside, for now, none of that happened. They didn't propose to each other. I have a little bit to say about this whole relationship between the two and what I saw in the Super Bowl. I know you didn't watch it, Josh, but what do you have to say to the Americans out there who think that it's some kind of government psyop or Biden administration psyop to have Taylor Swift endorse Biden after the Super Bowl?
To those people, I would say, I need you to do a couple things for me. First, I need you to put down your electronic device that you're reading this on, right? Whatever you're reading, whatever, signal chat groups you may be in, you need to get out of that group. When you're done with that, I need you to go to your front door. I need you to walk out your front door. I need you to sit down on your porch, take off your shoes, take off your socks, and I need you to walk out in your yard, and I need you to feel the grass on your feet. I need you to have a mind-body connection with that grass on your feet. All right? That's what I need you to do for those people. As far as the whole Taylor Swift NFL phenomenon, here's the deal. Here's my opinion. You're right. I do have an opinion on it. All right. First off, I have 3 teenage daughters. Okay. So Taylor Swift is a thing in our house. There's a lot of Taylor Swift love in our house. I genuinely don't care that she goes to football games. I don't care that she's dating a football player. I don't care. And I don't understand why people are so, upset. I don't understand why people were upset that, the cameras would pan to her during, football games, and people were like, well, they're showing her more than football. I was like, I don't care. One, because I don't watch the NFL, but even if I did, I don't care. But it's okay. So, an international, she is one of the most famous people on the planet. She's incredibly, rich. She has a massive following. yeah, people are going to pay attention to her when she shows up places. And I genuinely don't care. And the hate on her for, dating, like, I legit don't care. Like, that doesn't dictate any part of my life. If Taylor Swift wants to date Travis Kelce, knock yourself out. Go ahead. It has no impact on my life. And I don't understand the hate, that she gets. Does she make good music? Some of her early music when she was country, it was catchy. She's got some catchy songs. I think, when she went pop or whatever she did, I was like, oh, I don't care for it. But I don't know. The whole Taylor Swift thing is insane. But at the end of the day, whatever it is, go date who you want to. Like you said, roided up NFL players. Yeah, may work out, may not. And you know what? Guess what? If it doesn't work out, she's got another #1 single.
Well, exactly. And that's why it's not an op, because she probably would already broke up with him. But yeah, I don't know. I know, I think it's an op, but I don't think it's a government op. I think it's one of the most genius marketing ploys. Not genius. It's just a common sense marketing ploy that they put together. Do Travis Kelce and Taylor Swift have what it takes to, make it to the long? I don't know, but it's definitely drawn more eyes to the NFL, and NFL people who never heard of Taylor Swift before have definitely heard of her now. So it's like, maybe it's just a genius thing. It's a genius thing, because your daughters, Josh, I don't know if they're football fans or not, but I guarantee they know who won the Super Bowl this year. I guarantee they did. They don't know who won last year, but they'll remember this. It's just like, I think Travis Kelce, I don't know. I thought he was entertaining, but some of his behavior at the Super Bowl, Roger, was a little bit douchebaggery, a little bit. It was it's like, yeah, dude, I don't know. But at the same time, it's like, if anyone else other than Travis Kelce would have come up and done that to, Andy Reid, the head coach, would it even been on camera? I don't know. It's just like, yeah. Okay, so Josh is asking, what did he yell at his coach? Well, early in the game, Kansas City was driving down, and they were, the running. Yeah, okay, so they were about to go into the end zone. They were on like the 10-yard line. They gave the running back the ball. Travis Kelce was not in the game, and they gave the running back the ball, and the running back fumbled the football. So that made Travis Kelce mad that he wasn't in the game. I guess maybe he thought he could throw a better block or whatever, but he was all roided up. I don't know. I'm not saying he's on roids, but he was very excited when that fumble happened and the 49ers recovered the football, and he ran to Andy Reid and like damn near tackled him. It's like, keep me in the game is what he was saying. You need to keep me in the game. The implication is, if I was in the game, that fumble wouldn't have happened. Yeah, dude, I think you're just a little bit excited, maybe coked up and whatever. I don't know. It was just kind of a douchebag move for a guy who's in his late 20s, dating the most famous woman on the planet. I don't know. I thought, returning to you, Roger, I'm sorry. I thought it was a pretty good game. I'm glad Mahomes won. I still like Mahomes. But now that he's a winner, people are starting to hate him, just like Tom Brady. It's like Americans like an underdog, dude. They do not like a winner. You know what I'm saying? So now Patrick Mahomes is getting that hate. Nobody likes, the front runner, all that stuff. So I thought it was a good game. But what do you think about the whole spectacle, the Taylor Swift, all that stuff? What's your take?
I'm with Josh on this. I couldn't care less. And I will sum it up this way, and kind of what you were saying with the NFL and her and this and that. If we were lucky enough to have Taylor Swift on our podcast and our YouTube, you would not see one of us. It would just be Taylor Swift on the screen talking the entire time with our voices coming, right? I mean, it's like, why wouldn't you? You're the NFL. You're going to gain market share. For her point of view, you're going to gain market share. As far as who she did, whatever, dude. My problem with Kelce, I don't even care about the Taylor Swift thing. My problem with Kelce is the dude took a knee for the national anthem, so he can go F himself. And I would say that about anybody.
Did he really?
Did he? Oh, yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Not during the Super Bowl. Not during the Super Bowl. Previously.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
Then the
he was
Colin
a
Kaepernick
kneeler.
nonsense.
Yeah, yeah.
What the
So
hell?
he was a kneeler for the national anthem. I keep the picture on my thing because, as you see, but you know what? I mean, here's the thing too. You know, a lot of these guys and gals, especially in professional sports, they have such a short lifespan. Now they're going to make more money than three of us collectively are going to ever see in our kids and probably their kids. So whatever. But I don't blame any of them for trying to capitalize on their name, trying to make what they can, do what they do. And, again, I do not like Travis Kelce. The whole yelling at the Andy Reid thing, I think, is probably a little bit overhyped. I mean, if one thing, hey, the guy gives a crap and does believe that if he was out there, he could have thrown the block that wouldn't have caused the fumble. So as far as that goes, I'm kind of with Josh with that. With the Patrick Mahomes thing, here's what's pretty interesting with this. And I couldn't care less. I'm a Steelers fan. My only dog in this fight was like, I didn't want San Francisco to win because I didn't want them to have 6 Super Bowls like Pittsburgh, right? That's my dog in the fight. But what I think, yeah, exactly. So what's interesting with Patrick Mahomes and I hate Tom Brady and I hate Bill Belichick and I hate the New England Patriots. However, what Tom Brady did was incredible. To win his 5 Super Bowls. And then at the time when he left, it was like the Brady Belichick duo, greatest coach in history, greatest player, quarterback in history. But then Brady leaves, goes to a subpar Tampa Bay Buccaneers and wins a Super Bowl with an entirely different staff, right? And what's Belichick done? Well, he just got fired. So when you look at that, I think with Mahomes winning this, because it was his 3rd Super Bowl, it puts him up to where you could probably argue maybe he's the 2nd greatest quarterback to ever play the game, arguably. Okay. But I think in order to take the Tom Brady, place on the mantle, dude, you got to go to a different team and you got to win, right? I'm not saying that he should do that. I'm not saying he will do that, right? But I mean, I think, dude,
he's restructure, up there, right? If let's say Andy Reid leaves and Kansas City completely restructures, it might as well be another team. If Patrick Mahomes can bring that team to victory, like Tom Brady was apt to do, then he's in the conversation. I think it's a little early now. I think he really is good. I think he's very good.
He's probably a solid 3 because I think Montana's probably 2. I would probably say, Brady, Montana.
I just still think it's early for that. We'll see because he's young, right? He's so young, and I don't know. I just want to qualify this. I'm with you guys. I don't get the Taylor Swift hate. I do think she's a completely, at this point, manufactured persona. I don't know what goes on in her head. I have no idea. But
don't even care.
Yeah, I don't care. But nope. We watch the my wife likes to watch the awards shows and stuff, and therefore I have to pretend like I like to watch them. As you guys know, sometimes it be like that sometimes when you're married. And we watch the Grammys, and I'm sitting there watching Taylor Swift, and I'm just like, every little gesture she does seems manufactured. She does not seem like a real person. It doesn't seem like a genuine real person. It's like, I'm with you, Roger. It's like, hey, you do you make as much money on this as possible. And if you have a little earpiece in your ear and you're listening to, producers and stuff telling you to do what you do you, man, that's fine. That's great. I don't get the hate. I really don't. I get the Travis Kelce hate. I didn't realize he was a kneeler. But oh yeah. You know what I did see, John, and Josh hates sports. He hates sports. He doesn't care.
I don't hate sports.
I'm joking. But what I did see is that Travis Kelce is going to be the producer of some kind of movie that's coming out that is financed by the Obamas. So I think it's going to be a Netflix thing about who knows what it's going to be about. But yeah, apparently this guy's a raging liberal, whatever. It's like, dude.
He was a big spokesman for Pfizer as well.
Yes. Yes.
Whatever.
It's so gross. Well, we talked about, so we lost Ted. We lost Ted like 10 minutes ago. We lost Teddy because we started talking about sports. But
at least it's the end of the episode. It's at the end of the episode.
I want to bring up one thing. I know Florida State's not in the top 25 right now in basketball. And Josh is just, I'm sorry, Josh, you check out just like Teddy does when we start talking about sports. But Roger, I have a question for you. So when do the college rankings come out? That's question one. Because I'm looking at Kansas and they're still ranked number 6, even though they dropped, a big loss to my Texas Tech Red Raiders by 29 points. 29 points. So when do the rankings come out?
The
I know
AP
you have a
poll comes out Monday, 1:00 Eastern.
So it's a whole week. So how much
Yeah.
do you think after dropping 29 points to Texas Tech, a top 20, like a number 23, 24, 25 team tops Kansas loses to them by 29 points.
Where
how
are they
much
ranked
do you
right
think
now?
they're going to fall? They were ranked number 6 on the AP.
10.
10.
AP, dude, AP poll loves them some Kansas. They love them some Kansas, man. I'm just telling you, Kansas has lost a game a week for like the last 5 weeks, and they're still like great. And in fairness, they've got some really big wins, but they've got some really bad losses. They'll be in a top 10. The AP loves them, man.
Well, it's like Josh says, like, I think we said this in the podcast, and we could check the, we can check the liner notes on this stuff. We can check the game tape where Josh is like, no, parity is the same in football as it is in basketball. Do you still hold that by that, Josh? It's not.
Yes.
No, God.
And he said it with a straight face.
Dude, North Carolina, they were ranked like 4, and they lost to Syracuse. They lose to Syracuse, who's not ranked.
They've actually been on a little skid. Lost to them on the road.
How many? So no ranked football team lost to an unranked opponent.
Not as often.
Is that what you're saying?
I'm saying not as often is what I'm saying. It happens a lot in basketball. It does not happen as often in football. Even though it does happen, it doesn't happen as often.
I mean, we had a week not too long, too far back. Where was it? 7 or 8 of the top 10 lost. I mean, it's ridiculous. But real quick, before you guys close it out,
week 3 of the college season.
Yeah, whatever. Hey, real quick, just we got a listener that's I think he's been on his deathbed for like the last 6 days. He finally got so there's this respiratory stuff going on that, I think a couple of our folks have had it, and I think I was sick a couple weeks ago, and he might have a little like mesothelioma or asbestos or something like that for the type of work that he does. But Joe, we're thinking about you. He said he got out today. He spent the last 6 days in the hospital on this stuff. Finally got out today. He's like, hey, dude. He's like, I've been in this hospital bed. Are you guys going to release another episode? So it's thanks for thinking of us on your deathbed. But I am glad that you're finally out, and hopefully you're able to take a knee and take a break, buddy.
Man, Joe, my heart is with you, even though you're suffering way more than I was. I'm 50 years old. I got the flu like 2 weeks ago, coupled with a case of costochondritis. Josh has had that before. I feel like, dude, is my body breaking down? What's going on? So, Joe, at least, thanks for listening. I got a few people who have been hitting me up saying, why were Roger and Josh out partying in Hawaii or wherever they were? And we didn't put one out. And I was going to do a solo, but I just didn't feel up to it last week. So, brothers, we feel you out there, man. We're all getting a little older. We don't have a lot of millennials listen to our podcast. So, solidarity, man. Get a little sick. I don't know. It's just these past 3 weeks for me have just been brutal, brother. So I feel you, Joe. Thanks for listening. Thanks for listening to this one. Get well soon. The shout outs I already gave Darren one, Scotty, Ryan out there, all the Ryans that listen, and then I'll kick it to Josh to close us out.
Yeah, glad you're feeling better, Joe. Glad you're out of the hospital. Nobody ever gets better in a hospital. One of the worst places to recover. But 6-pack and a bottle of NyQuil, you'll wake up tomorrow. You'll be feeling all right. I've got a lot of shout outs, but one in particular, want to shout out Derek out in Hawaii. Thanks for listening, man. I really enjoyed grabbing a couple beers and catching up with you. We haven't seen each other since we did a job together back in Lebanon years ago. And so no, man, it was good seeing you. Thanks for listening. Thanks for taking the time. And for everybody else out there, hey, I'll be thinking about you next week when I'm sitting by the pool with little frozen umbrella drinks in Mexico. Roger's second 3D printed art piece. So y'all keep your Canteen cups full, tightly secured, and put some good stuff in them.